Hey everybody, welcome back. Beardly here. I've got an Ubers video for you. Today we're going to be talking about a Kicksin. That's right, an assassin doing Ubers. It's a lot of fun. It's a little bit harder than a smiter. Not quite as easy as a frenzy barb even, but it is a lot of fun. And this one is on what I call a mid budget. So what that means is it's not bottom tier budget, but it does require some mid runes. You can probably do it a little bit cheaper, but I found this to be the smoothest way of doing it after a little bit of experimenting. So we're going to get right into it, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. So let's start off with our stats. For strength, enough to equip your gear, just like you would think. For dexterity, you can go one of two ways. You can either go the max block route, which is what I chose to do. 75%, by the way, is max block. Or you can go only enough dexterity to equip your gear. Obviously nothing in energy. And those are your stats, pretty self-explanatory. Now let's talk the meat and potatoes of this build, the gear. For helmet, the best helmet in the game for doing Ubers on a melee character is G-Face. Crushing Blow gives you FHR, it's just a really nice helmet. It even gives you a little bit of strength. I have a plain IAS jewel in this one, so I could reach a breakpoint, but if you don't want to socket yours, that's up to you. You'll probably do just fine without the IAS. Alright, so let's talk about the shield. For me, I personally chose to make a Sanctuary in a Hyperion. The reason I made a Sanctuary is because it gives you a big chunk of resistances, as well as a little bit of FHR, increased chance of blocking. It's just a really good defensive shield. I understand not everybody has a Mal rune. For that matter, you may not have two co-runes. And I get that, but there are other options you can choose in a shield if you want. I personally really like a Sanctuary shield. It's just a really good all-around shield. The reason I put mine in a Hyperion is because if you look at the strength requirements for elite level shields, Hyperion is not as high as a lot of the others, but it actually has a higher base chance to block than a lot of the others. So it's a really good option for a 3-socket rune word shield when you're trying to reach max block anyway. For boots, I'm wearing Goblin Toes. Remember, if you're going to wear Goblin Toes, double up them because you do get your kick damage from your boots. Don't just wear normal level boots when you're trying to do Ubers because you won't hit very hard at all. So make sure you up your boots to the elite level, whatever you end up wearing. For me, I'm choosing Goblin Toes because they give a big chunk of Crushing Blow, 25%. First ring is Angelic, as well as the amulet is Angelic. The reason for this is for the attack rating bonus. You do need decently high attack rating when you're doing Ubers on a Kicksin, so the 2-set Angelic bonus is pretty nice for that. For belt, this is a crafted blood belt. This is a tier 3 blood belt, and the reason for this is it's not very difficult to make. You can make a bunch of these if you farm gems and jewels and stuff like that. This one only has 7% chance of open wounds. It can roll between 5 and 10, by the way. But that doesn't really matter that much because we do have open wounds elsewhere on our gear, so it's not really that big of a deal. I chose this one because it has some resistances on it. You can wear whatever belt you want as long as you have 4 potion slots. That's what really matters, obviously. The other ring I'm wearing is, of course, a Ravenfrost. Doing Ubers on melee, you need Cannot Be Frozen. It's absolutely essential. So Ravenfrost is really actually a great choice for your Cannot Be Frozen mod that you have to have somewhere on your gear because it gives other useful things as well. It gives you attack rating, gives you dexterity. It even gives you Cold Absorb, which is nice against Ijwal and Mephisto. It's just a really good ring. It's perfect for Ubers. If you don't have one, get one. I can't imagine they're very expensive if you're trading for these on the realms. For gloves, I'm wearing Drax gloves. Now, you don't have to necessarily wear Drax gloves. I realize that they're a little bit more rare and therefore maybe pricey, and also everybody wants them for Ubers and melee characters anyway because they're some of the best gloves out there. If you can't get your hands on Drax, you can wear different gloves, and I'll show you how to deal with that. I personally like Drax because they give a chance to cast Life Tap, and it's a high level Life Tap too. It's level 10, which means it has a fairly large radius, which is excellent when you're surrounded by a bunch of mobs. Again, it's not entirely necessary. I've done Ubers plenty of times without Drax. However, it does make it a little bit easier. Now, the weapon is a little bit of an unusual choice, and you're probably going to scratch your head when I show you this. I made Runeword Strength, and I put it in a Phase Blade. This is literally the only application I can think of for strength in a Phase Blade. And the reason I did this is very simple. We are still kind of trying to stay more in the mind of the budget here. So Amd and Tyr are not difficult runes whatsoever to get. For those runes, you get 25% Crushing Blow. You also get a chunk of Strength and Vitality. Despite the low level runes that are in here, it's actually a decent option for a budget character in Ubers because of all of the stuff that it gives you. And furthermore, the lifesteal that it has works with your kicks. Now, it won't work against the Uber bosses, but it will work against the minions and whatnot. The reason I made this in a Phase Blade has the fastest base attack speed of any weapon in the game at -30. That's actually tied with Greater Talons and Runic Talons, by the way. So if you can find a nice Greater Talons, which would be ideal for this use, in my opinion, because of the lower strength and dexterity requirements, that have some staff mods on it, such as +2 to Dragon Talon or +2 to Death Sentry, something like that. If you can find something like that and get 2 sockets on it, you could actually make strength out of that, and you'd have the same IAS breakpoints as a Phase Blade. For me personally, I wasn't able to find a nice Greater Talons or Runic Talons that had good staff mods, so I just used a Phase Blade for the base attack speed. But if you find a nice claw like that, I would pay attention to it. Maybe you could make strength out of it. There are, of course, other options in this slot. You don't have to use this rune word if you don't want to. You could use a flail with the rune word black in it, which is Thul Io Nef. If you wanted to do that, you could. I personally don't really like that option because it has knockback on it. I absolutely hate knockback on melee. It's so annoying chasing after the monsters. I can't stand it. So I've been looking for alternatives to rune word black, and I came across strength, and it served me pretty well, actually. On swap, I have a life tap throwing knife. This is why I say you don't have to have Drax necessarily, because you can just use a life tap wand. Now, it's a lower level life tap, which means when you cast it, and you do have to hard cast it, as opposed to Drax, where you just let it proc naturally. But when you cast life tap from the wand, you won't hit as many monsters with it because it's a lower level. So that means when you kill the ones that are affected by life tap, probably some more that are nearby are still attacking you, and they probably won't have life tap on them. So it's a little bit more cumbersome to use. However, it is a very viable option if you can't get your hands on some Drax. And you can actually shop a life tap wand from Mala in Hell in Act 5. So it's extremely budget. You just got to sink some time into it. For my on-swap shield, I'm just using a ward with a perfect diamond in it for some resistances. That way, when I do swap to my life tap wand, my resistances won't completely plummet. Now, I actually swap between 3 different armors depending on the situation. The primary one I use when I'm farming the organs, the first 3 mini-bosses, is Duress. This is Shale Thul. So again, kind of a mid-rune thing there with the rune. However, you put it in a good elite light level armor and you won't regret it. Having a Duress around is insanely helpful for melee characters. In my opinion, it's one of the best rune words for the body armor in the game before you get to very high-end rune words like Fortitude. This is just an incredible rune word for melee. It gives you FHR, it gives you Crushing Blow, open wounds. It even gives you some resistances. It's just really nice. So if you can get your hands on an rune, I would definitely recommend considering putting it in a Duress. It's just very useful, and you'll use it on most of your melee characters, actually. For me, this is the main one I use when I'm farming the organ bosses. When I'm ready to go into Uber Tristram itself, I actually put on Treachery, and I go and I stand and fire somewhere, and I wait until Fade procs. The third piece of armor that I use, and this is the main one I use when I'm in Uber Tristram, is Runeward Smoke, which is Nef Lum, but Smoke is just a really nice, fairly budget option for armor. It gives you a little bit of FHR. The big reason to use it is the 50 all res. When I'm in Uber Tristram, I've procced Fade, level 15 Fade from Treachery, which gives you 60 all res, as well as 15% damage reduction, physical damage reduction, that is. So between those 2 pieces of armor right there, I've almost negated Mephisto's Conviction Aura. Not quite, but pretty close. His level 20 Conviction Aura, by the way, lowers all resistances by 120. Now, for me personally, for my charms, I do have 4 FHR charms in my inventory, and the reason for that is so that I did not go down an FHR breakpoint when I swapped from Duress, which gives 40 FHR, to Smoke, which gives only 20 FHR. And of course, the elephant in the room, I do have an assassin torch in my inventory. It's actually an extremely good one. The reason I did this, even though this is supposed to be a mid-budget character, is because I feel that a Kicksin is probably not going to be your first Ubers character, right? Most people are going to use a Smiter, maybe even a Frenzy Barb as their first Ubers character. And then they're going to get that torch, and then they're going to have a torch that they can use in their inventory. The main reason for this is the additional resistances. I mean, yes, it's nice to have the 3 to assassin skills. That's very nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not really game breaking when doing Ubers on a Kicksin. It's not really that big of a deal. I don't even think assassin torches are really all that expensive. They're not like the highest grade torches that people are looking for. People always want Pally torches or Sork torches early ladder, so those are the ones that are going to command the highest value. An assassin torch, you could probably get a fairly low assassin torch for not that much currency. And when I say currency, by the way, I mean runes or in-game items that you're trading. I don't mean that one website, which I shall not mention because I feel very strongly in a negative way about that website. Okay, so that's the gear, and next we're going to move into the skills. Let's start with the martial arts tree. Now, obviously your main attack is Dragon Talon. I recommend maxing that, and the reason for that is that obviously it gives you additional damage, but really the big reason to max it is the huge attack rating bonus you get, 790% attack rating. If you look at my character screen, I have over 21,000 attack rating in hell on this character. Now, my chance to hit against the Ubers drops down to in the 80s, I think, 80% or so. So even 21,000 is still not enough to have a 95% chance to hit. But you definitely want to max Dragon Talon, and the reason is that huge attack rating bonus. I also personally really like to have a point in Dragon Flight, and the reason for this is it's just a really nice quality of life movement thing. You don't have to take a point in Dragon Flight if you don't want to. By the way, if you're making your weapon out of a talon of some sort, you might get a staff mod that gives you +1 to Dragonflight on it. So that would save you these couple skill points in getting to it. So that might be really nice, by the way. We're going to jump over to the traps tree next. I have chosen to max Death Sentry and its synergy Lightning Sentry. And the reason for this is to give me a little bit more AoE. A Kicksin suffers from not having any inherent AoE. You have to get your AoE from other sources. I'm choosing to use Death Sentry. Now, it's not terrific, but it does add a little bit of AoE damage and it helps speed things up a little bit. I don't really use it all that much, but honestly, there's not very many other places to put your points on this build. The most crucial thing is Dragon Talon. There's 20 points right there. You'll probably have another 60 or so points to play with. So for me, I went ahead and grabbed a little bit of AoE with Death Sentry, and I maxed Lightning Sentry as a lightning synergy to Death Sentry. And then I added a couple extra points into Fire Blast. And the reason I did that was simply to give an additional shot on Death Sentry. Because if you look at the tooltip, you'll see every 3 levels you put in Fire Blast increases Death Sentry's shot by 1. So I have 3 base in Fire Blast, which gives me 6 shots on Death Sentry. For me personally, the rest of my points go into Shadow Disciplines. I chose to max Venom because it adds additional kick damage. It doesn't actually show on the character screen that it adds kick damage. However, it has been confirmed through various sources that Venom adds to your kicks. One thing to consider is that having Venom active shortens the duration of all of your poison effects to 0.4 seconds, which means in the case of, for example, 100 poison damage over 5 second small charm, right? Instead of being 100 poison damage over 5 seconds, it shortens it 0.4 second duration, and it scales the damage down accordingly, which would mean 100 poison damage over 5 seconds small charm, when you have Venom active, that would turn into 8 poison damage over 0.4 seconds. So as you can see, it's kind of a weird, funky poison damage mechanic when you have Venom active. However, Venom itself gives very good damage. As you can see, it's over 500 poison damage over 0.4 seconds. So it's substantial damage, it really is. I recommend maxing it just to have a little bit extra damage. Now next what we're going to do is we're going to grab a point in Mind Blast. I personally don't really use it that much in Ubers. However, it's really nice to have. It's just kind of a good crowd control type thing. Even though I don't use it very much in Ubers, I still take it just in case. The thing I use all the time is Cloak of Shadows. I use this skill almost every fight where there's more than one monster. Say you're in that area where Lilith is. I forget what it's called right now. But say you're down there, right? We all know there's a bunch of archers down there, and they hit like trucks. They hit so hard. Well, if you run up on them and you cast Cloak of Shadows, they're not going to attack you for a little bit because they're going to be confused. They don't know where you are. They're blinded, whatever the case may be. They're just going to stand there, and then you can just pick them off one by one. It's so phenomenally helpful. What I've actually done in this build is I've dumped all my remainder points into Cloak of Shadows. I am switching to voiceover now. It's just easier for me when I'm playing. This is me demonstrating how to proc fade. I go to the River of Flame and stand in fire here next to Hadriel. I did edit out my footage in the organ bosses because I thought it was kind of boring, and honestly nobody really needs help with them. I did die to Mephisto once. He is quite dangerous, so just be careful when you die to him. If you do die to him or Baal or anyone that has minions, when you're trying to get your body back, cast Cloak of Shadows. That will help you out immensely. Diablo's not too much of a problem. He's just kind of a big tank with a big health pool. As you can see, I down him perfectly fine, no problem, and then clean up some of his minions so that I can get the torch afterwards. Not exactly the torch I was hoping for, but it'll do. As you can see, a Kicksin is a perfectly viable build for doing Ubers with. It's a little bit less budget friendly than a Smiter or a Frenzy Barbarian, but you can still do it on a mid-budget, as I call it. I did die a couple times while making this video, so if you were playing in hardcore, I would recommend, bulking up those resistances quite a bit, maybe some more life, maybe even throwing on a Storm Shield to buff up your physical damage reduction percentage. But I think you could still do it with this build perfectly fine. You just have to tweak your gear around a little bit. Anyway, I enjoyed making this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I do appreciate you watching it. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more like it, feel free to thumbs up or even hit that subscribe button. It would help me out a lot. So thank you very much, and you guys stay classy.